Hello and welcome back to Midgardia Chats with our third part of our Cyberpunk talk with Nox Populi, MobileCastle, and Fury. Let's pick up where we left off.
What I was going to talk about is if you wrote Cyberpunk in a particular way, the way it was originally written, would it still be Cyberpunk? Like, the aspects of Cyberpunk that we've so far passed that you couldn't now get away with doing it in Cyberpunk, even though it's classic to the genre.
Like,
sort of. My example was going to be like the classic. It's the opening line from I think Neuromancer about the sky being the color of a TV tuned to a dead channel. As far as I know, all the TVs I've seen in any time recently, a dead channel is solid black, and that is not what the author is referring to there, right? So it's like some of the concepts of the early aesthetic, if you wrote them now trying to be cyberpunk, that wouldn't mean the things that they did back then. And what are, I guess, the requirements that have to be changed? Like, what do we have to throw out from old cyberpunk to keep being cyberpunk?
For that, I would look at Black Mirror, which is basically the same thing, except in today's setting. Black Mirror is referencing the that reflection you get when you're looking at a screen and you see yourself when there is no power to it.
Mm-hmm. Seeing yourself in technology and the kind of disconcerting feeling of that was the whole theme of the show, which I think they did fantastically.
They did
in most cases.
I haven't, except for the fucking oh my god, pastels.
I haven't seen all of the newest. Like, I haven't seen all of season 4 yet. But
I haven't seen any of it yet. My girlfriend says we have to watch San Junipero, but
that's one season ago now. There's been one since then. But San Junipero is an interesting one because it was so divisive amongst Black Mirror fans. It was the what?
Was it
lesbians?
No,
lesbians.
It's only a little bit about lesbians. Like, there are lesbians in it, but what it's actually about is uploading at end of life.
Oh, I haven't seen that one. Or I forgot about it.
That's season 3, and it's a sort of idea of, do you allow end of life naturally, or do you try to, like, is it better if you upload to a computer but are then trapped there eternally? Is that better at end of life than nothingness? The concept there.
The question is will that be a constant stream of consciousness? Like, will there be a
stream of consciousness idea of uploading could be a whole fucking topic on its own. Like, that is massive.
That is massive, and frankly, I have to tap out of that one just because it touches some phobias for me.
No, that's fair.
Fair enough.
But
everyone interested in that should play the fuck out of Soma. Soma has every single interpretation of stream of consciousness uploading addressed at one point or another in the game. It's pretty much like a digest on, you've never heard of this topic, here's what the things to say about it are. It's lovely. And terrifying.
As is the way with most transhumanist technologies.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, in that case, let's kind of hop to a different issue with transhumanism and whatnot. It gets touched in Deus Ex, where everyone goes nuts and starts killing their family members because they have augments that get like a virus or something like that. Like, how will
vulnerability of transhumanism?
Yeah, how, like, is this any different than someone releasing anthrax in a parking lot somewhere?
Well, it's new threats, and they're threats that are, I guess, obviously quite relevant to my interests. There's this whole kind of modern theater of online and technological threats to your day-to-day, which suddenly the idea of transhumanism takes from, oh no, my online identity is gone, to, oh no, my actual physical identity is gone, and that's a huge step.
And, I mean, I feel like the major difference between releasing anthrax in a subway station and hacking everyone's cyber brains is that it's much, much easier to make a computer virus than it is to make anthrax.
I mean,
I don't know if I'd agree with that. Yeah, like, unfortunately, a lot of chemical or biological warfare is, especially now with access to information, it's unfortunately easy. Like it is. I mean, it's why.
Knowing what I did as a kid and how I got a hold of some of those things, yeah, no, you can do a lot with a little.
It's why online ordering and stuff like that can occasionally get you visits from Department of Homeland Security. I have a acquaintance, I guess, who got a visit from both our local intelligence services as well as an American one because he ran a farm. But when he was ordering all of the fertilizer for it, was not going to be there for a long time, so he ordered it all to downtown Vancouver. And that got him a visit from, just because of the uses of that, like, not shockingly, both the country he ordered it from and our own country's intelligence agencies visited him being like, what the actual fuck are you doing? And it did come out he had a farm and where it was going and what it was being used for, but, like, it is so easy to make those sorts of, like, bombs or chemical weapons or biological weapons and that sort of thing now, especially with access to information on the internet, that like they have to be worried about people buying otherwise mundane objects.
Like pressure cookers.
And this has been around since it was in an episode of the X-Files from I think 19 somewhere around there.
Well, when was Anarchist Cookbook out? Because even all the way back to 80s, I think. But even all the way back to that era, like the idea that the average person could create a threat that used to be other governments only, it's been a real thing for decades now.
71. And I am going to say right now, speaking of visits from intelligence agencies, let's not say anything specific because I do not want to get fucking raided by CSIS. Okay. Yeah. But yeah, even going back to the incident in the Dulles down in the U.S. back in, I want to say the 80s, where a cult cooked up a bunch of salmonella and attempted to weaponize it in order to swing local elections. Like, that shit's scary. And
my favorite example is obviously the Tokyo subway attack.
Yeah,
in the 90s. Doing just like a bunch of guys in a cult just making up sarin gas in their home. No one caught them making it. Didn't matter that they were just normal civilians. They made a shit ton of sarin gas, and it wasn't until they'd already released it on the subway that anyone really could have tried to catch them. And until several years ago, people involved in it were still at large. And it was 15 years on.
Yeah, not to mention whatever they were getting up to at Barnmore Station and all that kind of stuff.
That's getting into conspiracy shit, which I adore, but is not relevant.
Not today. But yeah, like the amount of shit that you can find out on the internet to really fuck people up is amazing. And
please don't do it.
Yeah, please don't do it.
And then you get in, like, you move from that to also hacking and viruses and stuff like that. Like, it's a whole new area that the average person isn't susceptible to in a way where it physically harms you. The transhumanist idea opens you up to those sorts of threats.
Yeah.
I think that's the...
sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, I think that's the point I was making, and, like, I guess what I mean about it being easier to do this is, like, at least, intelligence services can track things like your Amazon orders and stuff like that. If it were easier, or rather, if it were harder to make computer viruses to infect people, then it wouldn't happen as fucking often as it does. And you get that happening a hell of a lot more than you have, and affecting a lot more people just due to the nature of the internet.
Yeah, like the last time a major biological or chemical weapon affected the sheer number of people as the malware we've seen in the last few years, it's been a very long time.
Yeah, it's because it was fucking World War I in a trench.
That there is also two different levels of severity of an attack. One
people
is
didn't die
actually killing people.
Malware.
Yeah. So that's the question of transhumanism is, will you get those kind of level of attacks, but because now it's a part of their physical body, will you get that, like, guy who figured out how to, I don't know, like, create enough tension and whatever powers the muscles that it explodes and then it takes out half a body with it?
Like the old thing of overrunning computer fans until it sets on fire, but suddenly instead of losing your computer, you're losing your life.
Yeah.
Let alone Internet of Things applications like setting your oven to go to fucktillion degrees to light your goddamn place on fire and stuff
And
like that.
the horrifying thing is Internet of Things, by and large, has the worst online security of anything we've seen in decades. Like, Internet of Things is so horrifically insecure.
As the phrase goes, the S in IoT stands for security.
I love that, yes. And it's also it's the combination of the reuse of reuse of both hardware and software in Internet of Things, as well as the fact that as we get more and more better security, as we get more and more better crypto, the hardware, like the processing requirements of the crypto, are so much more that we're now back to creating devices which are too small to be able to implement those on. And like that's a huge deal. I watched DEF CON talk this year about a guy who he'd find a vulnerability in a single piece of tech, like a one Internet of Things thing, and just because of the reuse, he would realize that that vulnerability found suddenly made, I think it was in the nature of like 200 other devices vulnerable just because of the reuse.
And the other issue is it's a network. It's an Internet of Things. You get one thing that has a flaw, and now you're on the network.
Which suddenly gets you into the better secured things. Yeah. Because physical access, or like access to the internal net of something, makes every computer vulnerable, right? Like you're only as strong as the weakest link on your network.
Exactly. My aunt works in security stuff, and she's saying that some retail, I forgot which retailer it was, they had a major hack a couple years back, and it was because someone managed to find a flaw in the programming for their HVAC system. Like,
I remember hearing about that one.
That's actually a really common one, yeah. And I think part of the security issues with the Internet of Things is the economic consequence. A lot of them are low-level startups that don't have a ton of money when they're putting out their initial product, and they don't want to blow that money on network security because that's not an immediate return. Like, there's no direct return on investment in that.
As the person who worked on one of those, I worked in one of those settings. It was a big deal. It was like, how do we can't afford the security. How do we deal with it? And it was finding a way. Like, it was really just as simple as, all right, we got like, back when I worked there, we got a ransomware attack. All of our hard drives got encrypted. It was, I had a plan ahead of time. I knew how to deal with it. Like,
it's almost preparing for when it happens as opposed to trying to stop it from happening.
Because you are in such a weakened state, you have to, instead of that, you just prepare the counter and have it ready and available. It's kind of like, it's a fight. And
I mean, it's interesting, the parallels to medicine of there are areas of medicine where we can do things in advance, like we can inoculate against things, but there's so much of medicine which is we have to wait until it inevitably shows up and then we can treat the person, right? Like the preventative side of it and the side of treating knowing it's going to happen are two very different and both massive parts of medicine, and security is unfortunately the same way. We would really like it to be we prevent attacks, but there's also the aspect of it of when we are compromised, what do we do?
And it's easier to plan for the being compromised than it is for stopping the attacks in the first place, especially in that startup position.
Yeah, when you don't have a shit ton of money to have a dedicated team for this.
It's just a shitbag like me saying, "Oh shit, wait, I have backups."
And once that the transhumanist angle comes into it, and that gets to you're preparing for when you lose control of some augmented part of your body, that's more horrifying.
Oh
like,
yeah,
imagine having a button like an EpiPen that you explode your leg off with.
That's kind of cool.
Oh my god, I need to talk to Dapper. Anyway,
It's interesting you compare it to medicine in particular, because there's a fairly significant issue in hospitals with ransomware attacks from like Fancy Bear and that kind of crap, screwing up actual medical equipment.
Because of how outdated most medical equipment is.
Yeah, and the fact that it all runs on fucking Windows 95 and
XP
shit.
and 95 and shit like that. Yeah,
because especially
everything moves so slowly in medicine.
Yeah, and especially in the States where it's all decentralized, like commercial systems, network security doesn't seem like it's worth the cost. It costs a decent amount to keep on top of everything, and again, no return on investment.
It takes both investment and talent, and like there's just, you know, the people who are talented out that are not necessarily interested in going and working at a hospital for their security, right?
Yeah.
It's unfortunate, but that would only be so much worse when we get into transhumanism.
Also, while I was double-checking information about Fancy Bear there, apparently the group behind that made an application to infect the D-30 howitzers the Ukrainian artillery forces use. So, welcome to the cyberpunk future, guys. We fucking nailed it. You can hack into an artillery system.
Yeah.
Because through an infected Android app. Like, who the fuck ran howitzers on Android?
Oh my god. Alright, so you were talking about Solarpunk earlier. Do you want to start a nice little, like, commune somewhere nice in southern where it's warm and we can ignore the world?
If you're into dudes, I have a friend who's starting a big gay farming commune.
Oh, unfortunately. Otherwise, I'd be in.
I've actually talked with our old Smite Club buddy Quark about doing exactly that. Solarpunk seems like a weird intersection of cyberpunk and, like, survivalism.
Mm-hmm.
It is, in many ways. It's sort of like global warming, corporate America, late corporate capitalism, nowhere safe. Let's just fucking go.
Come move to Alberta with me. At least we won't flood.
Yeah.
Fucking, I would.
According to the Ukrainian army, only 15 to 20% of their artillery systems were compromised.
Oh my.
Oh my god.
Now,
wow, yeah, that's encouraging. Thanks, guys.
Now, here's the real question. They gave a percentage. Like, do they have 5 and, like, 1 was infected? Like,
I can actually figure that out.
That's the thing is, they can. Another theme we see a lot in Cyberpunk is the controlling of information.
443.
Okay, so 15% of that.
So that's about 100, yeah.
And yeah, that's a lot.
That's fucking sobering.
They weren't self-propelled, so there is that.
Yeah, but that could blow up a military base, which could have other things.
Only if they were loaded.
Only if they were loaded.
Yeah.
Like, the actual amount of harm you could do with that is pretty minimal unless they keep them loaded, which it's Ukraine and they're against Russia, so maybe, but...
And I mean, this is almost a proof of concept of, if you could take over those, can you take over ones that can do damage on their own in the future, right? Yeah.
Pretty soon we'll have to have the cyber attack suite that you have hovering above you in a helicopter that has a guy plugged into the internet.
I mean, the real concern, the thing people worry about is hacking American military drones. Because those don't need to be loaded, right? Like, it's something that actually can do damage on its own if taken over.
You could say that with Tesla cars too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, hacking cars is a whole thing. Like, as we get to self-driving, I mean, it's not even, we don't have to wait till self-driving. The amount of control the electronic system has in modern cars is enough that it's a serious concern. There's already been theorized but not proven that murders have happened from taking over the electronic parts of a car and either locking steering or locking which directions you can go or locking speeds to kill someone.
Yeah, there was a journalist for Vice, I think it was, a couple of years back, who was doing research on the article and challenged some hackers to hack into his car while he was driving, and they disabled the brakes while he was, like, going down a ramp.
Mm-hmm.
So,
holy shit.
Yeah. You remember what I said about Watch Dogs 2 not being, like, actually future. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't. I would have to look up the name. So maybe. I don't know, but I'd have to look up the name. But there was a researcher that it's theorized that's how he died. He died in a car crash while he was collecting information that the American government wasn't particularly happy with.
Nice.
And that's one of the working theories right now is that his car was hacked.
I think Chevy or Ford, just a couple of days before this recording, announced that they were working on a self-driving car that didn't even have a backup set of like wheels and pedals.
Oh my god.
Or I guess wheel, not wheels. Which I hope it has a big red stop button at the very least that just fucking force engages everything. 'Cause, like, that sounds fucking scary. Maybe it's the fact that I live in Canada. Automated cars scare the shit out of me, and please let them never come here in winter.
I'm actually super, super excited for self-driving cars. Like, I want that technology. I just want it to be very secure, and it won't be for decades after its first offerings are out.
Yeah.
Once we start seeing the self-driving Tesla semis running down the highways, I really just hope they have, their own little thing like a train system, so we don't have to be in the same lane as this thing that could potentially just, go
Run you
mad.
straight over and not even notice.
Yeah.
Oh man, soon the only human truckers will be the valiant ice road truckers in the north. Tragic.
And the equivalent from Australia, which go into the desert.
That seems like you should be able to automate that.
Yeah and no, because you have to be so careful with the roads there are mostly just dirt paths.
Nothing to dodge, just fucking gun it, straight line, done.
Yeah, I'm sure it'll work great.
Yeah.
Lose a shipment to a wallaby.
I mean, it's a real risk. I don't know how big wallabies are.
Not
Small.
that big.
Oh, okay.
Are still something that can be transferred digitally?
And the answer is actually yes. There was research being done on it's like this fascinating thing. What was that? Rats, I think, where they managed to install.
Yeah, false memories into their head.
Yeah, it's like they had a thing that they would effectively load. Like they would put it in a rat's brain. It would experience some things. They would remove it from that rat's brain and put it in another rat, and the new recipient of that would react as if it had that information.
Yeah, what they did is they used lasers to stimulate parts of the rat's brain, or they read parts of the rat's brain, and then they used lasers to stimulate the same parts of the other rat's brain, and then the rats would react the same way.
Fucking fascinating. Terrifying, but fascinating.
So,
and I mean, the fuck yeah Cyberpunk, half of that is, could you take someone who's very skilled at something, emulate the part of his brain activating when he's using his skill, and give that to someone who isn't skilled in it? That's a super cool idea. And the terrifying part is, can you
learn Kung Fu?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the fuck yeah part. The terrifying part to me is, can that be used to make you feel like an event happened that did not?
Or go full Manchurian Candidate. Yeah.
In theory, you could, but the question I would ask is, how complete would it be? Like, knowing how to punch is one thing, knowing when to punch, and like how much of that would it be, and how much would it change your personality?
We've no way of knowing that.
I know, and that's why I want to know. That's why I want to just explore it and discover it, and like say, well, here's what I think is going to happen, and does this make sense? And then like someone else says, no, you're a fucking idiot. Take coffee.
I think, Matrix jokes aside, martial arts would be a terrible application of this, just because of different body proportions, heights, etc.
Yeah, that's not a great example of the positive uses of it.
Yeah.
It'd be interesting to look at as an education tool.
Yeah, I was going to say education is like the really big one. Is like, can you, instead of taking history, use something like that? Like for things that are rote memorization, is that going to be more useful, right? Like your interaction with your physical body in one skill will not matter as much as, say, a skill that's mostly remembering the right thing at the right time.
I think some of our less ethical governments would find great use of it as a re-education tool as well.
Yes. Yes, absolutely, and that's kind of back to the scary fucking half of it.
Yeah.
If there's other ways you can do that already, they're probably already doing it.
Yeah, but this is faster. You throw them into a machine and they're out in like 2 days. As opposed to you throw them in the gulag for 15 years and then also their children.
Yeah, but you're getting useful labor out of that.
Debatably. By the sounds of it, all they really achieve in North Korean labor camps is like giving guards, a place to vent, to release some steam. Or they sell them to Russian logging
I've heard
firms.
that.
That's also
yeah.
a thing. Yeah.
That they've been like offloading North Korean labor camps to help in parts of Russia that they don't want citizens.
Yeah, no, they use it for slave labor.
Which is, it's kind of nuts.
And fuck the world.
Man, who needs evil corporations when everyone else is... You already have evil everything.
People are shitty by default, and the corporations are just one example of that.
Yeah, it's amplified by the sheer amount of people.
Yeah, I mean, 7 billion of anything, you're gonna see some fucking extremes.
Yeah. And, yeah, horrific...
Just from statistics.
I wonder if we could just burn greed out of people. That'd be awesome. No, that would have a lot of incredible unintended ethics. That's why you have to go into the corp side, not the government side. Not bound by ethics as much.
Depends.
Yeah. At least our regulatory agencies have moved away from disincentivizing reporting, unethical behavior or safety failures. Because holy shit, that was a problem for the entirety of the Cold War.
Was not a good time.
Hey, we'll fine you $10,000 if you report that something unsafe happened. Huh? Why aren't we getting reports of the unsafe things that are happening? I fucking wonder.
I think it's because of it's newspapers. They're desensitizing people, so they don't.
That's exactly what it is. Newspapers and cell phones.
Yep, newspapers and cell phones. That's actually so. You tend to get Cyberpunk with a lot of ideas that corporations just kind of have their own reign. They just do whatever the hell they want. But in modern day life, we tend to get things like alternative regulators, like software companies buying into a certain like a certificate or standard, saying we have a gold standard. It's, like we have been validated by like Kaspersky, or secure for this, or like something like that. What kind of roles do you think corporations can actually do? Like, this goes back to the good corporation thing that we were talking about earlier. But like, is there a spot for it? Like, do you think it would be like, in a world where everything is shit, do you think those people would go through and say, okay, like they meet these certain standards, or like?
I mean, the big question is, yes, is there room in the cyberpunk dystopia for the ethical corporation? Right?
Yeah, that's it.
Is what you're getting at.
You said better than I did.
And like, it's really interesting because I think we've actually seen both the start and the eventual conclusion of that in real life. Let's talk for a minute about Google. Original motto was "Don't be evil." They don't really use that anymore. Look at the early days of Chrome, where when they're putting out their browser, they put out the open source version of it so that anyone who liked their ideas but didn't want to use the other shit that they put in it could use all of the benefit of that and just compile it themselves with only the things they want. Like, there was an era where Google was ethical, was really looking to be that corporation. And what happened is it grew enough, it got enough money, enough investors got on board that was lost. And I do think that's the inevitable conclusion for these kinds of companies. They will either fail or not really ever make it big, and then the fact that they're ethical won't make a huge cultural impact, or they'll get big enough that the unethical will move in, either by taking over it at the top or just like even get big enough that you can't track every middle manager what they're doing and stuff like that, and the unethical practices have space to move in.
I mean, this is where you start to get into there's no ethical consumption under capitalism.
I actually heard a really interesting thing on that topic in a podcast I was listening to earlier. Apparently, between $10 million and $100 million in revenue, a company will switch out its like upper level management staff an average of 4.1 times.
Holy shit!
Yeah. The general wisdom is that certain managers are only useful at particular levels of revenue. Beyond that, you will need different staff.
Interesting.
I think that plays into it as well with a lot of startups, how they end up going down the hole.
Well, also a lot of startups, the guys are looking for the sale, right? Like they think like the money from a startup often isn't the product being successful, it's the company being successful enough that you sell it to someone else to run, and then you start on your next startup. Like that's the sort of the entrepreneurship idea of you're looking to get in on the space where something is missing, but you don't want to work in that the rest of your life. So you create the niche and then sell it at a high price to someone else and get out, because that wasn't like you're an entrepreneur, you're not a whatever that one company was for that short time you're working on it. And like that's really, that opens up to major shifts in morality as the management changes, right?
Might have actually been startup to $100 million in revenue. I'm not sure. One of the two, either way. But yes, that's you create your fucking like phone case that brews coffee and then sell it off to Facebook for $1 billion or whatever. Actual product on Kickstarter, by the way. The fuck?
A phone case that makes coffee?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Lord.
Like a Keurig?
Yeah, it's like a little coffee disc that you slot into it. I say it's on Kickstarter, it failed, not shockingly.
Shockingly.
It makes one piece, it's really big, it's a thing that heats up in your pocket, and you have to carry a separate thing for it to drink from, so...
That's just a bad idea.
Does it use the phone battery to make it?
It runs off the phone battery, yeah, so enjoy your fucking battery life.
Let's use one... I would trade my cell phone for a cup of coffee right now.
I would never make that choice. Like, that is not... I will never be in a position where I want coffee more than my phone.
The use case in their Kickstarter video was, like, running into a lady in the street and making her coffee from your phone, because, man, anybody's gonna trust the shit you just poured out of your phone case.
Oh my fucking god.
That's awful. Like, they couldn't even come up with a use case.
Like, man, I just get a flask.
Right?
Yep. Carrying a thermos is actually easier than your product. You should not make your product.
Yeah, but you can make coffee with your phone.
I mean, not to mention the all the other issues surrounding making phone cases, which is they only fit like one type of phone.
Yep.
Well, yeah, but you make it adjustable in the two.
Or you do whatever other phone case does, which is you pick the two most popular this year and only make it for that.
Yeah. Failed Kickstarter projects are actually a fucking goldmine for like what the upper level in a cyberpunk society should look like. It's all fucking ludicrously excessive. It's like, man, what I really need in my life is a pillow I can make to light up to make reading in bed easier. Like,
okay, that sounds dope. I don't know, like that's stupid, but I kind of want it.
It's still a conspicuous consumption thing.
yeah, like it's not quite eating edible gold leaf with every meal, but it's up there.
Oh my god.
All gold leaf edible?
Anything's edible. The question is how many times.
Is consuming little enough of it that it's not harmful to you.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go eat a brick of gold.
Don't do the thing. You won't have teeth.
Shit,
we're
will be
not...
so cash.
Dude, I'll have grills, not teeth. Are those still a thing? I don't know.
I think those are still a thing.
Are they? I don't know. I'm not hip and with it enough. I mean, I'm from Canada, so I'm still living in the 1990s, basically, so... Nirvana's good, right?
I thought that was mostly an Eastern Europe thing.
It was a thing in the States for a long time.
That Canada was 2 decades behind.
Yeah. I've heard it joked about an MST3K, and that's good enough for me.
Okay. Yeah, because that's super modern relevant.
Yeah. Still real to me. Yeah, it's old. I'm Canadian. That's why I know it.
Okay.
Full thematic unity achieved. And thus concludes our series on Cyberpunk. This is Midgardia Chats, I'm Garmbreak1, and I really hope you enjoyed this discussion. If you did, please consider subscribing to our channel or donating to our Patreon at patreon.com/Midgardia. Check back in 2 weeks for the first episode of our next discussion topic, character creation. See you next time.